Live if everyone can turn off their video and audio.
The event will begin shortly. We are waiting for all our guests to join the event. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Nausheen Zainab, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the exclusive edition of KiwiTech's Venture Fair. Today, we have a fantastic panel discussion on impact of AI regulations on funding, followed by 5 high-value growth stage startup presentations. Now, let's get started with a brief introduction to KiwiTech, followed by the Venture Fair. It's my pleasure to introduce KiwiTech, a one-of-a-kind innovation ecosystem that's home to 500 plus portfolio startups and 300 plus mentors, all committed to supporting innovators globally. It all began in 2009 when a team of seasoned entrepreneurs who had previously built and scaled a publishing services company for a 9-digit exit decided to start another company to empower startups with innovation. All in all, we at KiwiTech particularly team up with early to late stage startups to support entrepreneurs with 360-degree support in terms of technology, fundraising, mentorship, networking opportunities, and go-to-market strategy. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite our panel moderator, Syed, Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, KiwiTech, to start with the panel discussion. Over to you, Ike.
Hi, Nausheen, can you hear me and see me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks, depending on which part of the world you are dialing in from. As Nausheen mentioned, my name is Ike. I'm the SVP of Strategic Partnerships for KiwiTech based in the Washington, D.C. area. It's a real pleasure to bring this AI venture fair to you. I'm joined by my panelists, my co-panelists rather, Abid Siddiqui from the AI Fund and Lulit Tesfaye from Enterprise Knowledge. I would like both of them to give a little bit of background on themselves as well as their organization. And then after that, we'll dive right into it. So just going by first name, Abid, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here and excited to jump into the convo. By way of intro, my name is Abid Siddiqui. I'm a principal here at the AI Fund. AI Fund is a early stage venture fund and studio. So we are incubating ideas and launching them through our venture fund, but we also do some very early stage pre-seed investing as well. So we are agnostic towards industry and certainly focus on a vertical of obviously AI as a core tenant for our investment thesis. Prior to joining the fund, I had been an operator in the startup community for almost a little over a decade, helped scale and grow two different companies towards exits, one as a first employee, the other as a employee number 10. So certainly early stages where I'm very comfortable at and helping tech companies grow. So and before that, I had a prior life in finance, which I'm not very excited and proud about, but I did work in finance for a number of years. So thanks.
Lulit?
Hi. So my name is Lulit Tesfaye. I'm a partner and vice president of our knowledge and data services at Enterprise Knowledge, where our work with enterprise AI solutions fall under. We are Enterprise Knowledge is a consultancy based in Washington, D.C., just out in Arlington, Virginia, just outside of D.C. We specialize in strategy, design, and implementation consulting for enterprise knowledge and data management solutions. We are a firm that's solely dedicated to this space, which really makes us the largest firm that's dedicated to knowledge and data management. My background before this is kind of all over the place, actually. I share financial services with you, Abdi, as part of my background. Before joining Enterprise Knowledge, where I was actually employee number 10 when I joined with EK. I've had the experience to grow the company and grow the company. We are now looking at reaching 100 people by the end of the year. So it's been a journey in the professional services space. We work and partner with a lot of AI startups and a few organizations that are also mature in our space. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I have just over 15 years of experience doing something with knowledge, data, information in this space, and especially AI, seeing AI, especially in the past decade, evolve. Specifically, the past 2 years has been interesting. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I also have a law degree, which is neither here nor there, but it gives me. I've worked for a financial regulator before, which. This being half of this being regulations, I'm interested to hear your perspective as well as part of this conversation. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful, Lulit, and congratulations on that growth for EK. And again, sounds like your time there has really had an impact. So, all right, let's dive right into it. I'm going to post this link from Forbes. And I want to make sure I got this link right. While that comes up, Abid and Lulit, during the discussion, if both of you want to share your contact details, your website with our audience, I know they'd really appreciate it. So this link from Forbes is a little bit dated. It's about 2, maybe 3 months old, but it just describes an incredible statistic here that I will read to you. This is according to the OECD, the Organization for Economic Development, Economic Cooperation and Development. So in 2020 to 2022, it said 21% of global VC investments, which is about $75 billion, went into AI. This compares to $3 billion in 2012. So in 10 years, basically looking at a 20x increase. The article then just, it's a wonderful article, goes on to what the split is between US and China. About 80% of these global investments are going into US and China, 4% in the EU, and then, again, the rest in the other parts of the world. Just again, an incredible breakout there between, what it looks like, what the industry breakout is like. The biggest investment is going into driverless vehicles, related mobility technologies. Second biggest is the healthcare, pharma, and biotech. So the question I have for both of you is that if you can share, based on your experiences, where are you seeing some of the emerging trends in AI investment? If you can maybe tell us a little bit more about some of the technological advancements and breakthroughs that you're seeing there. as well as, in your view, again, sectors that are attracting significant investor attention. And let's go in reverse order this time. Lulit, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, so this is I have an interesting question, and I have a different perspective coming from, what I am seeing our clients are asking for in this space, and how the work we're doing has shifted. So we, being in the enterprise, from the enterprise perspective, we are also industry agnostic. So we work with different sectors: financial services, healthcare, e-commerce. We have a few clients that represent this space, and about a decade ago, my answer to this question obviously will be slightly different, right? Innovations in the enterprise was focused around having the ability to get insights from data, predictive analytics, having it in one location, in one place. Over the past few years, there's a shift that we are seeing in the AI space, in addition to the generative AI and LLMs, but specifically when it comes to abstracting the ability to connect your structured and unstructured information by focusing on the descriptive part of the information and data that you work with. So that's a strong shift that we have been noticing throughout, especially with everyone going to cloud, and with all the data lakes and data warehouses, and the big solutions like Databricks, Snowflakes that are coming into play as those integration capabilities. I think a lot of AI startups are partnering with in this space. So I would say the biggest shift that we're seeing is this data fabric layer, or this layer that kind of allows AI to understand within your context of the organization. When you say revenue for a coffee company versus revenue for a bank is completely different. So allowing AI to understand this contextual information, that focus is what we're seeing emerging in this space. And there are a few companies that, especially startups, that have started doing that as that kind of like that middle layer. So that's a big part of it. Obviously, I think I'm not going to go into the LLMs in this space, the Gen AI space. That's also another strong layer, especially allowing the structured data side of the organization have access to the unstructured information that typically has been sitting in a silo in content management systems, digital asset management systems, the world that is not usually connected. And this is also leading into what you're calling like this multimodal models, or like fit to purpose models. So AI for data governance, AI stored, data storage assistance, automated data quality lineage extractions, stuff like that is what we're seeing a lot that our clients are asking for, or at least experimenting with. Abdi, I would love to hear your perspective.
Sure. Yeah, it's fascinating. I think, similarly, I've seen, certainly the leveraging of structured and unstructured data and starting to create use cases that quite honestly weren't possible or weren't accurate a number of years ago has been all of the rage with generative AI. So for obvious reasons, I think that's where we see the most activity in terms of where our funding is going. That said, it's a really challenging environment at the same time because it's very difficult to differentiate. And so, Lulit, you mentioned data, and I think that unique data assets, that's certainly a step one that we're looking for, or at least what I'm seeing a lot of early stage funds is how unique their data set that they're able to either use some sort of knowledge base that's augmenting the existing knowledge base of OpenAI's models or any other commercially available LLM. That said, it's really hard to have unique data. A lot of folks think they have unique data, and it's really very low. It's not as common as you think. I mean, certainly there are commercially available data sources that you can pipe in a number of different assets and create some unique insights around. And I think those are the use cases where we were probably excited about a year and a half ago. And now it's really understanding, all of that data is available to any entrepreneur that gets any type of financing. You can purchase data, you can acquire data, but can you generate some unique data asset that then can provide context to an LLM to provide some meaningful or material amount of difference in performance? So I think that's certainly one area that's been focused on. And in that same vein, when we think about opportunities, we're no longer thinking about, again, a year and a half ago, there were a lot of commercially nicely gift wrapped, commercially available LLM that's producing very interesting insights. But now you're seeing that perhaps as the tip of the spear, but then being vertically integrated into a particular use case. So as opposed to providing really interesting insights, some sort of a better engagement process for an opportunity, you're now seeing it going from a conversation to taking actions downstream to coordinate, to facilitate, optimize, reduce costs, et cetera, you name it. So those are the use cases I think that certainly have become a little bit more interesting, because now you're starting to see initial, a couple of years ago, it was much more, that's really cool, or really interesting use of Gen AI, really interesting insights. But what's the ROI? Like, what is the actual value of let's say an end user? Like, is it cost savings? Is it new opportunities, generation of leads for like a sales marketing technology? So I think that the vertical integration of a solution is quite honestly is critical at this point. Technology is just, you can't differentiate off of, I have a better mousetrap. And certainly data is great to be able to differentiate if you have that, but it's just so rare to have some unique data asset that no one else has. And quite honestly, those unique data assets are typically sitting in an incumbent that you're trying to disrupt. So typically they have the data asset that you need, or some unique insight that, quite honestly, like they're spinning out. They're likely working on this and leveraging that data asset, as is every single sector. And so when, like, you asked, what sectors, what industries do you see, funding going towards? It's going to every industry. They're just going into very targeted use cases, and it's very noisy. So if you have a product, it's certainly a challenging environment to differentiate. And oftentimes it's the previous statements, but then the second half of that is you're betting on the founders, particularly at the seed stage and pre-seed. Notoriously, folks say, you're betting on the entrepreneur. But I think this goes, you really double down on that framework, because business execution and go-to-market, the partnerships that individual can bring to the table, the network of employees they bring to the company, that's really what's now become the competitive moat for a lot of these LLM-based companies. So yeah, that's at least what we're saying.
Wonderful. I'm going to post another link in the chat window. This is an article that went up on the KiwiTech website 2 days ago, just echoing, Abid, exactly what you mentioned, that the applications of AI really being ubiquitous across the board: social networking, online shopping, personal assistant, leisure, and then it ends with some of the ethical and future considerations. I want to turn the attention next to some of the challenges that are coming up in the AI funding space. And I'll post another link here. This is from another investor. It's a LinkedIn article. And they make a very interesting point about some of the challenges that people are seeing in AI and other emerging tech fields. And I want to highlight one specific statement that got my attention in AI, because I think that was a very good point, which is that the challenges for AI lies in differentiating between truly innovative technologies versus only the incremental improvements. In other words, is this just a better mousetrap, right? And so what I would like to ask with both of you, and maybe Abid, we can stay with you for now, is that what are some of the challenges that you see as you are evaluating the startups, that are looking to secure funding and support? What are some of the strategies maybe that they can do to mitigate some of these risks? And then, Lulit, from your point of view, maybe again, similarly, what are the risks that you're seeing across enterprise adoption? What are some of the hesitation? What should startups do, could do better to, get that enterprise attention and really differentiate themselves from the competition? So, Abid?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. I think I hit on a little bit of that in the prior response, so I won't repeat myself there, but certainly a lot of that pulls into this question. But there's one particular area when we think about early stage companies, likely you're not building your own foundational model that you're leveraging, right? I mean, that's just unrealistic and not something to look at. That said, you're likely going to use a commercial, and I'm going to stick with generative AI because that's just the common, the fad right now, or at least where we see the most amount of venture financing flowing towards. And so you're likely going to leverage a commercially available LLM. Maybe you fine tune it. Maybe there's some methodologies to provide context to that LLM. So that's somewhat differentiated, but quite honestly, it doesn't move the needle in terms of truly differentiated. So I think what happens is your challenge is to convince the audience, the investor, if you're fundraising, that you have a path to be not dependent. The dependency on commercial available LLMs, there's got to be a path towards how you see yourself coming off that. I think it's acceptable, certainly for the early stage, to be leveraging, like the commercially available LLMs. I think that it's expected. But certainly by Series A, you want to have a plan in place so you're not dependent on OpenAI's model, for example. They go down, your business goes down. That's certainly a risk that I'm sure all of us online think about daily with our businesses. That said, it's very challenging to do that. And I think this is an industry problem that we just had our CEO summit, which is just an event for AI fund portfolio companies. Our LPs come in, we all talk about these trends. And one of the key takeaways was the entire industry is grappling with this concept of, how do you get off like this dependency issue of one LLM? And if let's say you have a product and you want to have a backup LLM or another source for this Gen AI, you have to have an entire prompt chain designed for that new LLM. You have to design and massage that entire vertical to connect to a backup LLM. They upgrade their models. Now it's GPT 5 and Bard whatever version. So now you need to update again. And so the management of these prompts, for example, if you're just using that to facilitate the responses, it becomes very hairy very fast to be able to, especially if you imagine most companies here have very complex processes to elicit the responses that they get from an LLM. So that becomes very challenging. It's an industry-wide problem. Investors are very hyper aware, but they will all ask this question. So are you like your dependency? They'll ask, and the response is going to be, I'm using, Bard, I'm using OpenAI, whatever. And I think that's acceptable, but your response should be, we do think about, as we gain funding, particularly as you get to Series A, that you want to, start to think about, how I can build a team that's going to be focused on this dependency issue and having another LLM available in downtime, and then designing an entire workflow around that, which is, quite honestly, not the greatest use of funds, but that's the state of the industry. So until someone solves that problem, that seems like it's a challenge that every LLM-based company is facing. Yeah, that's what I would say right now.
Awesome.
Yeah, if I could add to that, and this may be a little bit further down the line, but what I see a lot of startups stumble, once you get in behind that client firewall, you have a couple of solid clients. The biggest challenge is churn and that ARR, like being able to plan for, typically what happens is for businesses in this space, they are more developer friendly than business owner, business decision maker friendly. And it's that pocket of the organization that starts experimenting with your tool. And usually those personas do not know how to sell up or gain buy-in from the corporate chain. And that's where we end up spending a lot of our time supporting our partners in the vendor space, in the AI space, is there's a cool data project that's a POC that the data science team or the machine learning team, the engineering team has been playing around with. Now what, right? That's the biggest challenge that that we always encounter, and I always look at and encourage our partners to plan for is how do you go past that developer? How do you make it more of a business tool? I think LLMs and ChatGPT took off because the business is excited. They get it. They know how to talk to their data, their information, and it doesn't need sales to a certain level, and everybody's experimenting with it. But once you get to that level where you've shown some value, I think having a clear roadmap to expand beyond the development team and getting business behind the solution is, I think, really pivotal to becoming perform up to a certain point and scale.
Yeah, just to double click there, I certainly think that getting pilots, getting logos onto your deck early stage, as I mentioned, defensibility, what helps with it, de-risking. I mean, it's massive if you're able to do that. And I think organizations like KiwiTech and other of these accelerators, studios, incubators, they do a really good job of trying to connect you to those resources. You have to find the right one, find the right organization that has the partnerships that they can provide you. But once you do hit that stride, early stage, you're not going to have a sales team that can go ahead and get access to, enterprise level decision makers. And so I would strongly recommend taking advantage of those opportunities and finding the right one. They're a dime a dozen. There's a number of them out there, but once you find one that meets your mission and what you're trying to build, it's like magic when it does align like that, because they can open up doors, get you logos, the funding then just naturally flows through because you start to de-risk your company.
Got it. We have a question on LinkedIn, and either one of you feel free to jump in and address this. From Greg, how do you see AI being integrated with small business to customer communication while keeping the more intimate level of relationship with local small business and customers?
I can take a stab at that. We've done a lot of work in sales, automation, marketing tech. I mean, it's a tremendous opportunity in marketing tech right now, is to leverage Gen AI to provide personalized content to different end users. So whether that's sales, whether that's customer support, etc. I mean, certainly Gen AI is making its round across the entire, the vertical of sales and marketing. I think for small businesses, it's interesting because, I'm thinking of a local mom and pop shop down the street. How can they get access to these AIs that people are building for, quite honestly, enterprise businesses for the most part? And I think that there's a long tail that's going to naturally, like as with many technologies, as over time become less expensive and more accessible. I think that's likely the answer, like, just from prior trends in the market, is typically you'll see a democratization of these technologies, where then it trickles down to the smaller businesses and becomes more affordable. That said, I think generative AI is a little unique because it is relatively accessible, even with just ChatGPT. Like, right, if you open up an OpenAI account, you can likely provide customized, responses. It's very manual, but you can leverage these open source tools to start leveraging it for your very small, business. So I think if you get creative, there's a number of ways to do it. Certainly the glorified enterprise automated Gen AI solution that can provide personalized content to your user base it would be ideal, but I think it'll take a number of years to get there for a small business. But again, if you're creative, there's a number of different open source tools that you can use. You hire someone that kind of leads this function to do outreach, use these, a little bit of a manual process, but it certainly creates a personalized and same impact as some of the larger enterprise softwares.
Did it? And feel free to pass by.
I was thinking.
Have to,
No. Just to piggyback on that, like a case study that came to mind for a commercial real estate company, I think the thing is to get the data about your customer right. I keep going back to that. Data quality is very important for AI. And I know this of the work, but it is the plumbing and it is the foundational piece. To give you an example, one of our clients that we worked with, they came to us because their chatbot recommended to their sales rep a property that the client, their customer, already owned as part of their conversational or personalized recommendation process, because their data about their customer is stored somewhere else in their properties data that links them to the customer is stored elsewhere. AI has no way to connect that information. So small business, large business, I think it's important to keep your data clean, especially when it comes to customer data, because AI is as good as what you feed it at the end of the day, until we get to the real intelligence part, which I think is a conversation for a different day. But yeah.
Also, just one more comment to throw in is that small business, I don't know how small of a business we're talking about, but a lot of the sales and marketing companies that we're seeing are targeting what I would consider like certainly small businesses, like 200 employees and above. So that segment of the market is being serviced by startups. They're targeting SMBs as a starting point. Typically, SaaS will focus on that as a starting point and then start to sell upstream to the enterprise. So I don't think that the small businesses will be left behind. My comment was more for, the pizza shop down the street or, the Chinese food restaurant. Maybe there's some personalized content that they can, leverage Gen AI for. That was my comment. But I certainly think that small, mid-sized businesses, like they're going to be serviced and these solutions will be available to them as well. The question to Lulit's point is, will you have the data in a usable format that you can leverage these solutions? For sure, that's always a challenge for any company, no matter how big or small.
Got it. Fantastic. Now, given that all three of us are based in the Washington, D.C. area, we obviously have to talk about regulation. The president issued an executive order in October and talk about the most coincidental timing. We had our in-person AI event in Northern Virginia, I think the same day or the day after, and I think, Abid, you were one of the panelists there. So I want to come back to that because I think it's now been 3-4 months in. We are, I think, starting to get some of the earlier results in. This is obviously a very important topic given what's going on in the world today. The impact of AI on disinformation, on other areas. Half of, I think, the democracies in the world will be voting this year, and there's a lot of concern around what AI can accomplish. I will put in the executive order in the chat window. And I'll also put in this very interesting New York Times article from earlier this month. This was regarding the elections that happened in Pakistan. The winner, Imran Khan, is in jail. And so basically his political party put out his victory speech using AI because obviously he wasn't available. And again, I think this is something we'll see being repeated, as this year goes on and obviously heading into our own election towards the end of the year. So the question for both of you is, when it comes to regulation, whether it's the executive order or the regulatory overall landscape surrounding the AI technologies, what do you see are some of the impacts on funding decisions or buying decisions when it comes to corporates? How do investors or corporates assess and navigate these regulatory technologies when they're looking, which startup they should engage with, buy from, invest in? Let's see now for the order, Lulit, maybe we can start with you and then go on to Abid.
Yeah, so I would take this from, some of our clients, especially from what I'm seeing in the federal space. So we have a few organizations that are in financial regulations from the federal side, as well as industries in education and healthcare. I pick these because I'm really interested and excited about what we are seeing when it comes to policy adoption for AI and open data in this space. So a lot of organizations you may have seen, the DoD has published their AI strategy for 2024, 2025, for instance. A few other federal regulators have done the same. But what one thing that has kind of existed that's fueling this AI investment for them at this point is especially in the financial industry, because they have a lot of regulatory requirements to publish data. They have policies like the Financial Data Transparency Act is one that just comes to mind, the Open Government Data Act. There are these policies that already exist that I think would be a key instrument to executing these executive orders at the ground level. And what this facilitates is, Abid, you said earlier, there's no new data. There's an exchange of it to a certain point. That interoperability of data, where did this come from? How did the AI made this decision? The explainability aspect of it. I think there's some lessons to be learned from, especially within the financial and healthcare industry, these policies that require data to be accessible, traceable, and explainable in how you reach a decision. So I see that as a big driver in why our clients are investing in AI, because we have some of these policies that mandate them to publish their data, and especially for the usage of AI. So that's one example that comes to mind that I think is relevant in this scenario.
Lulit, let me stay with you for a second, because I have a few questions about some of what you just shared. You mentioned the guidance from the DoD, other federal agencies that you're working with. So I'd love to hear more that in the last 3 or 4 months since the executive order came out, have you seen an uptick in interest? Have you really seen a lot more calls, for example, coming and looking for that help from you? Same, maybe even less. Kind of how has that changed over the last few months?
Certainly. The most common thing that we're seeing now is in the form of these bake-offs or RFIs, requests for information, like how innovatively would you integrate this AI solution within our constraints, especially for the DoD, as you would imagine, there's a lot of limitations and security requirements that you would have to go through. So we're seeing a request for proposals, these panels that are being requested by the federal government, bringing in industry. Actually, there's a lot of involvement coming in, providing ideas and input on how they're going to pilot, implement, prototype, even starting from creating a safe infrastructure to bring in these AI solutions. So the conversation has there's a big uptick in that space. We are having more of those conversations and attending more of these events and sessions. So I think that's an indicator to your point, Ike, of where there's an opportunities.
Abid?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I feel like the folks that I work with, I feel like we're a little bit more reactive, and we meaning like
Sorry, is that on the startup side? What do you mean reactive on which side?
Yeah, I meant reactive from an investment perspective. Like in the companies that we're investing in, I'm not seeing a lot of deterrence of AI impacting how we invest or who we invest in. I think that's likely because we're investing at the application layer. And what happens is the regulatory bodies that are coming up with these different, making sure the models are biased, don't have any challenges around that. That's happening at the foundational layer where the models are being impacted. And so the application layer seems like it's more reactive of, okay, well, I'm going to play with whatever commercially available LM that's available to me. And I'm going to, leverage the privacy policies, the bias or unbiased, non-biases within the model. But then I know that there are investors, like, for example, when we are launching companies, we are always talking about, ensuring that there's no biases in these outputs of whatever the use case is. And so that's certainly always a conversation, but to some degree at the stage that we're talking about, you're reliant quite a bit on some of the foundations that are already been set. But as for an opportunity though, it is a interesting space to be in, because you could think through of, you could be the infrastructure for enforcing whatever regulations or policies are coming through. And we have a couple of companies that are operating in the space, which are looking at taking upcoming regulations and then providing an impact analysis to a particular organization. And that's their entire business. So you're seeing that this whole market is being almost like created to be able to adapt with all the changes that are happening on the technological side, but then also eventually mirroring it and mapping it to what's happening on Capitol Hill. And notoriously, the tech always moves a little bit faster, so it needs to almost retrofit to whatever policy and regulations come down the pipeline in the future. So I mean, but from an investor perspective, I mean, we keep our eyes and ears open of what's happening. Okay, making sure that so here's some of the challenges and policies that are upcoming. But we're pushing. If you're in a regulated industry, more often than not, like if you're in healthcare, HIPAA is going to be HIPAA, and there's other regulators to make sure that, decision support, who's accountable for a decision, for example. Those are industry challenges that probably are more nuanced and deeper in the weeds than what's going to come down the policy. So if you're already thinking through, providing an unbiased decision support tool, you're likely already accounting for a lot of the top level federal mandates that are coming down. That said, that's a very big, how do I say, blunt comment. It's not nuanced, and certainly there will be impacts to all industries, I'm sure, as the industries, everything matures in terms of regulations. But certainly from an investor perspective, we're keeping our eyes and ears open, but we're certainly not deterred by, the bias of a response. We're ensuring that when we do provide that investment, that is top of mind to make sure that the product does produce appropriate results.
Got it. Wonderful. Thanks for that, Abid. And I just realized we're actually 5 minutes into our Q&A session. It's such a fascinating discussion. We got a bit carried away. So we do have another 5 minutes left in the Q&A section. We have a question that got emailed out to us. And so it touches on what we were just talking about. And what's interesting is that it addresses last part of your comment specifically. So I think that's a very nice segue. The question was, are there particular sectors within AI that are more heavily impacted by regulations in terms of funding availability? So you mentioned, for example, towards the end, healthcare and HIPAA and kind of what's going on there. But I'll stay with you, and then I want to go on to Lulit, that whether it's startups or even enterprise adoption, any verticals that you're seeing getting more TLC from investors or corporates, or for that matter, being more impacted by regulation, any specific sectors or subsectors?
I can't think of one sector that's a little bit more impacted than others. I think all across the board, everyone's concerned data privacy. What's the data set that these models are being trained off of? I mean, these are, cross-sector. I can't particularly think about an industry that's more heavily impacted. I think that the challenges are ubiquitous there, but I do think that the opportunities for, again, these companies that are able to take a more forward approach towards what is going to be coming down from like a regulatory body. I think that opportunity of taking the regulations and then massaging it into the impact of a product, of a business, of a end user, of a startup, I see a lot there. But quite honestly, I don't think I have a strong opinion or take on a particular sector being more impacted than another. But I'd love to hear, Lulit, if you have anything otherwise.
Yeah, I think you touched on it in a sense of, these where there are higher restrictions around risk-averse organizations that are highly regulated with that from when it comes to data protection, data policy perspective. So financial institutions come to mind. They are very risk averse and very selective. Before they go out and invest in a new tool, they have the capacity to experiment in-house. So that affects their investment capability. We see that a lot. A lot of in-house teams, they're hiring as opposed to buying at this point. That's a trend for these types of firms. Financials is a big one. I think healthcare, you touched on it, Abid, in a sense, because there's a lot of personal information. HIPAA is a big obstacle, so they're not rushing to the front line to invest in AI solutions. They are cautiously optimistic at this point, at least from what we're seeing. Where I don't think that AI regulations are immediately affecting our customer service type of safer areas where you have room to experiment. If AI gets something wrong, it's not the end of the world. Obviously, it will cost you customer retention, but where the consequences are not so dire. So the one thing that I would recommend to look at is, what is your risk threshold? Organizations that have the agility to fall, get up and continue, or pivot or change are the ones that are looking to experiment with AI tools and are not immediately impacted by it. Organizations that we work with in the EU are at the top of those that are very much impacted. In fact, I think there's an opportunity for AI there to even facilitate the regulatory process that may be a thing or coming our way. But for our European clients, that's GDPR as top of mind, obviously. Not just European clients, but clients who are in the US but have clients in Europe or have data in Europe. We're seeing that now there is a need to separate that data, because now you're getting into territories. So a team in the US cannot use their own company data that is created in Europe, or they need to know that AI did not use that to make a decision or a recommendation. So that lineage of understanding, this is actually an opportunity area that we see, which industry has not addressed. At least for us, we've been looking for tools to figure out how to do this lineage tracking or understanding of what data did I use based on policies and regulations, which policies are applicable to this, is a top of mind for a lot of CEOs and CIOs right now that are looking to or even experimenting with AI.
And just to add a comment to that, just another example, I'll stick to healthcare because we were just talking about it. But, again, this is that from my prior comment where, the industry regulate, like the way the industry operates is probably more restrictive than perhaps even the federal regulations, where, for example, in healthcare, physicians will, if you're using an LLM to summarize or help with the decision support, physicians, regardless of whatever HIPAA or whatever federal mandates are coming down for that sector, the physicians themselves will say, I want to know what data you saw or what data you used to come up with this decision support, function. So again, I think in the heavily regulated industries, financial sector, healthcare, others, the practitioners themselves don't trust the AI, so they're asking the questions that are requiring the products to actually surface the information, which the regulators will eventually, mandate anyways. So at least that's what we're seeing in some of these markets. But it's Lulit, it was a good point.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and if I could add on, I saw a question I can in the Q&A that I think relates to this. I can give a very specific example that kind of connects the pieces. So this is an example work we're doing in ESG where our client is looking, they're global, they're Europe based, but also have a huge US presence, and they're in the energy space. And the question that we're helping them answer is a supply chain question, which is, if I am shipping this mouse to calculate your carbon footprint of how much what material should I use for manufacturing? What packaging material should I use? Plus, what shipping lines should I use in order to minimize my carbon footprint. So as you would imagine, there's a lot of supply chain data here. There's manufacturing data. There is product data that comes into play, and transportation in all of that. The key here is there's multiple pieces involved, but what AI is helping do is kind of abstract the calculation piece, like predicting, being able to take all the data that they have, analyzing it in such a way, and to give them this calculation, the ability to say, if I use this product and ship it in this mode, then I save this much carbon footprint. Much like now I think Google has started doing this. If you book a flight, it tells you how much carbon footprint that you have, something similar. But we are kind of partnering with one of the big four consultancies to help define the supply chain, calculate using AI, some foundational data plumbing and aggregation, cleanup, and all of that. So they have a framework now where they are able to say, using these products has proven to save us this much carbon footprint. But also, another pilot that we're doing is using AI itself to reduce carbon footprint. So an example of that is they have a lot of data, petabytes of data, identifying this dark data that they have and deduplicating and shredding the thing that they don't need. Our experience is 70-80% of data is outdated, duplicative, useless to a certain point. It's that 20 to 30% that has the most valuable insight. So AI is really helping in coming up with a framework and doing that, and allowing organizations to say, I'm using AI to clean up, like reduce my carbon footprint to a certain level. It may not be as equivalent to the energy that is required to process AI, but there's some interesting aspects of using AI even in the ESG space. I thought that would answer one of the questions that Jerry had as well.
Sure. And Lulit, we actually have a company out of Houston doing work with AI in the ESG space. They're not presenting today, but would love to connect you with them, because I think that could definitely provide a lot of value to your clients. So Abid, any thoughts? We are past time, but
I can
we have enough time.
I'll throw a quick example, because I know we probably have to jump to the next session. Again, sticking with healthcare, we're seeing a lot of use cases around physician burnout, administrative burden of healthcare. So a quick example, physicians that are almost spending about somewhere between 1 to 2, even sometimes north of 3 hours a day on their inbox. So just answering digital messages, reviewing labs, responding to patients. And that's very easily, you can see a use case where a generative solution can review an inbound message or a lab result, review the entire patient's medical record, draft a response, provide next steps for the physician that didn't click, yep, I like that message, go ahead and shoot it out to the patient, and then subsequently take the next steps in the EHR to coordinate all of the activities that a physician has to do. So that's a simple use case that, quite honestly, we have a company that's doing that now, but EHRs are all over right now, which is they're trying to leverage generative AI in some meaningful way, which classically they haven't been great at, but Epic, maybe they come through and they actually do something. They seem like they have the right partnerships and people at the table, so hopefully that happens. But that's like an example of, I think, if you're a physician, that's a very meaningful use case. Understanding that, getting 2 hours of your day back, that's pretty nice.
Awesome. And there's another question. Okay, Jerry just said thank you. You're welcome, Jerry. I think, guys, this was incredible. Abid, Lulit, thanks so much for taking the time today. It was wonderful, so informative. I know the audience really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. With that, we'll be going on to our presentations part of the event. Would love for both of you to stick around and give feedback to our portfolio companies and their business model and their ideas that they will be presenting. We have 5, I think maybe 6 companies presenting today from all parts of the country, 2 from California, and then the other ones, I think, again, from pretty much the rest of the country. Good luck to all the companies presenting today. We'll be cheering you guys on. And with that, Nosheen, I will turn it back over to you.